Let's talk about aspect ratio. And in general terms, there are two kinds of aspect ratio: window aspect ratio and pixel aspect ratio. Ultimately, aspect ratio means the relationship between the width and the height of either the window or a pixel. So let's start with window aspect ratio. And for this, I'm going to use Photoshop to illustrate the concept. What I have here is a video frame of a standard definition 4:3 video. Now, I mentioned a couple of terms in here that are kind of important. First of all, it's standard definition. So that means that the size of the video is a specific dimension in terms of width and height. And I also mentioned that it's 4:3. 4:3 refers to the aspect ratio, which means that if we were to divide the width into 4 elements, 1, 2, 3, 4, then the height would be the same as 3 of these elements. As you can see here, it generates perfect squares. This is a 4:3 aspect ratio. The reason why 4:3 is quite important is because traditional TV in standard definition has been 4:3 since its inception. Another very prominent aspect ratio, it's 16:9. And over here, I've got another frame. In this case, it was taken from a high definition video, although it's been resized just to 66%, so we can fit it in the window here. But the logic is the same. The difference, though, is that this aspect ratio, it's a 16:9 aspect ratio. That means that if we divide the width in 16 equal parts, the height would be equal to 9 of those parts. And as you can see, it generates those squares. So this is a 16:9 video. There's multiple other aspect ratios, but to tell you the truth, the most prevalent are 16:9 and the one that we just saw earlier, 4:3. If you're shooting with high definition, chances are you would be shooting in 16:9. The 16:9 aspect ratio, sometimes it's also called widescreen. And the 4:3 aspect ratio, sometimes, mistakenly, it's called full frame. Now, the reason why I mention, why I explain this whole concept of window aspect ratio is because we're going to be using it every time that we need to resize video. If we need to make this video smaller, we need to make sure that we maintain the proportions. Otherwise, we would be turning the content either too fat or too thin. And we certainly don't want to do that. Especially if there's people, and especially if there are females in the scene. Nobody wants to be seen fat, for example.